Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to give it a couple minutes and let people join. Welcome, everybody. Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. This webinar will be recorded, so if anyone joins late, we can always share the recording and catch up, but we do have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let me just make sure. Okay, so welcome everyone to the 2025 Small Grants Fund Applicant webinar. My name is Stephanie Borcha. I manage the Small Grants Fund here at Global Forest Watch. I'm joining you all today from the ancestral lands of the Piscataway and Anacostan people, also known as Washington, D.C. Before we get started, I'm just going to give some webinar instructions. So this webinar is available in French and Spanish. So if you would like to select the language that you would like to hear the webinar in, you can click on this interpretation globe icon at the bottom of your screen where there's the Zoom menu, and click on Spanish or French. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please include your questions through the Q&A button, and we will have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. This will be our agenda for the day. So quick introduction to Global Forest Watch for those that are not familiar. We'll do an overview of the Small Grants Fund. We will review the eligibility requirements. I will give you a quick tour of the application platform, which is where you will be submitting your applications. I will give a few proposal writing tips, and then we will end with Q&A. Okay, so what is Global Forest Watch? For those that might not be aware, Global Forest Watch is an online, freely accessible geoinformational systems monitoring tool. It offers a suite of forest monitoring that is meant to increase knowledge and transparency about forest landscapes, harness information to mobilize local action by governments and civil society, and also advance private sector action to stop commodity-driven deforestation and manage forests sustainably. One of the main features we have on Global Forest Watch is our near real-time deforestation alerts. So this graphic shows how these alerts work. We have satellites that capture an image of the Earth every day. Our research team works to train those satellites how to identify when deforestation has occurred. Once that has happened, the computer processes that data and marks it with a pink pixel to indicate that there may have been deforestation or tree cover loss. These alerts get shared with relevant audiences, and users act on those alerts. This is a graphic, a demonstration of the deforestation alerts in action. So you can see along this line, there's been some what clearly looks like human-caused deforestation because it's very straight lines and in these neat little rectangles. So this is an example of what the deforestation alerts would look like on the application. And now I'm going to give a very quick demonstration of Global Forest Watch. We had a video planned, but that didn't work. So I'm going to just share my screen quickly and show you around Global Forest Watch very quickly, just so everyone can orient themselves and understand the platform a little bit better. Global Forest Watch is an online forest monitoring tool designed for action. To get there, you go to globalforestwatch.org. As I mentioned, it's completely free and publicly accessible, so anyone can use it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on map, which will take me to the map of Global Forest Watch. And the layers that are default turned on is tree cover gain. So you can see that here is in blue, tree cover loss, which is in pink, and tree cover, which is in green. Tree cover loss is our annual data set that we release that goes through extensive analysis of our research team. So it's a little different from the integrated deforestation alerts. The near real-time deforestation alerts prioritize urgency so that folks can get notified as soon as possible when there is a possible occurrence of deforestation. So just to show a little bit more of the capabilities of GFW. So if you click on forest change here, this is where you can find the integrated deforestation alerts. So we can see that there have been some alerts over here in Pará, in Brazil. Another thing that you can do is layer various land use layers. For example, one that folks often use is protected areas to understand if there's been recent deforestation in the protected areas. A better way to see this is to reduce the opacity of the protected areas layer, for example. So we can see there's been a good amount of deforestation in the protected areas. Another important note is the time frame of the deforestation alert. So right now it's showing since October. So if we want it to be even more recent, say the past couple months, we would toggle that. And then the last thing I will show very quickly, which is important for the application as well, is how to create an area of interest, because we do ask for that on the application. There's a section where we ask for areas of interest, and we also ask for the hyperlink to that area. So I went from the legend to analysis, draw or upload shape. I'm going to draw. You can also choose to upload a polygon, your own polygon. And I'm going to start clicking on the map to draw my area of interest. When I'm done, I'm going to click again on that last point, and that creates my area of interest. I'm going to wait for it to start loading. Okay. And then it does this analysis. This share, well, okay, so first you have to share the area or save the area rather to your GFW. So I'm going to do that. If you don't have a GFW account already at this point, the system will direct you to create an area. You can include whatever tags you want. And then as soon as forest change, make this area public is really important, because this will allow us, the reviewers, to actually be able to view your area of interest when you include it on your application. So this is very important to make sure that this is on. And then once you save it, and you click share area here, this is what you're going to include in your application, where we ask for the hyperlink of your area of interest. So this is the link that you'll include for the specific area that you are going to, that you are proposing to monitor in your application. The last thing I'm going to show quickly is the help center. So we have a really extensive help center where you can learn about it on your own. We have information on map and dashboards, Forest Watcher, which is the also mobile application that you can bring into the field with you and download alerts, etc. Okay, so sharing my presentation. Hopefully you can see that. Great. So now that we've done an overview of Global Forest Watch and its capabilities, I'm going to move on to a summary of the Small Grants Fund. So the objective of the Small Grants Fund is to strengthen the capacity of nonprofit organizations and civil society on the ground to effectively use GFW tools and data to reduce illegal or unplanned deforestation and sustainably manage forests. The timeline and funding, the grants range from 10,000 to 40,000 US dollars. The project timeline, projects are expected to start August 15th of 2025. They will range for, they will go for 12 months, and then they will wrap up in August 14th of 2026. And usually we choose, we end up having enough funding for about 10 to 12 projects per cohort. The benefits of the Small Grants Fund, we not only provide financial support, but also technical support. So grantees are paired with advisors that are GFW staff that helps them throughout their project respond to any questions or concerns they might have about using Global Forest Watch. Prior knowledge of Global Forest Watch is not a requirement for the Small Grants Fund. We would just like to see that you have a history of using forest monitoring and how you forest monitoring and protection and how you plan to incorporate Global Forest Watch into those strategies of forest monitoring and protection. So that connection should be made clear in your application. In the application, we're going to ask you for the approach of your project. So we'll ask for a primary approach and a secondary approach. The secondary approach is optional, but sometimes can be helpful, especially if you are proposing a dynamic project that takes on a bunch of different angles. So these are the project approaches. We have advocacy, forest monitoring and enforcement, journalism and storytelling, stakeholder engagement and capacity building, and informing land use management and/or policy. So I'm going to give some examples of each of these approaches using projects that have happened in the past, just to help you understand a little better what we're looking for each approach. As the first approach, advocacy, an example was an organization that worked with Indigenous communities to develop monitoring brigades, which resulted in the creation of 6 demarcation maps. This helped them to advocate for strengthened land rights and the creation of an Indigenous reserve. For the forest monitoring and enforcement project approach, a past example of this was an organization that used deforestation alerts found on GFW, along with drone technology to identify and monitor areas of threat. They worked with forest authorities to conduct weekly monitoring expeditions, which resulted in 21 forestry law enforcement operations. For journalism and storytelling, we had an organization that used data on GFW to report on cases of illegal deforestation and raise awareness for community land rights, including a short documentary unveiling the real costs of a major hydroelectric power plant. And for stakeholder engagement and capacity building, An organization sensitized community members in forest fringing villages of the negative impacts of unsustainable forest practices. Following sensitization, they formed and trained 2 community networks on data collection via GFW tools. And finally, for the informing land use management and or policy, we had an organization that used data on GFW to analyze the direct and indirect impacts of a large-scale infrastructure project, which resulted in visualizations of deforestation scenarios for 2030 and 2050 of the project. These findings were shared with relevant decision makers. So that was a quick summary of some of the approaches that were, and the scope of the Small Grants Fund that we'll be looking for in applications. I'm going to now move on to eligibility requirements. Before I start, I just wanted to remind everyone that all of the information that I'm going to share in the next couple of slides are all available on the guidelines for applicants. So please do make sure to review those very thoroughly, because it has the project eligibility, the organizational eligibility, geographic eligibility, all of that is on the guidelines for applicants, which is on our apply page of Global Forest Watch grants and fellowships. So for organizational eligibility, must be a legally constituted nonprofit and non-governmental, have an annual budget greater than 50,000 US dollars, have a computerized financial system for tracking and recording expenses. We will need the most recent audit. If selected, we'll need the most recent audit or a balance sheet and income statement and cash flow statement for the previous 2 years. And 1 project point person with professional working proficiency in English. This will be for the due diligence documents that will need to be submitted if you are accepted. Project eligibility, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking for a demonstrated commitment to forest monitoring and sustainable forest management. The key framing here is that we are looking for projects that work to reduce illegal or unplanned deforestation. So protecting standing forests. We're also looking for GFW tools and data to be demonstrated as a key component of project activities. We would love to see that the project activities are likely to attain meaningful results, leading to decreased deforestation and lasting impact beyond the project's life cycles, either through working with local communities or working with important actors to improve that knowledge and the sustainability of the use of GFW. For geographic eligibility, this is the geographic eligibility. This is also mentioned on the guidelines for applicants. I know that this can be kind of a sensitive issue. We recognize that there are urgent forest challenges happening around the world, and organizations doing incredibly important work that might not be eligible because we don't have them listed as a eligible project country. Unfortunately, because we act as a re-grantor, we are also kind of beholden to the funding that we receive. So, and we also only end up choosing about 10 to 12 projects in the end. So, due to funding and institutional priorities, we're very limited in the scope of the geographic eligibility. So thank you in advance for your understanding on that. And just a note here that the organization that's applying can be based outside of this geographic eligibility, but the projects should be within one of these eligible countries for the grant opportunity. This is a process and timeline. So the submission deadline is May 9th, next Friday at 11:59 p.m. East Coast time of the United States. The application review period will take place from May till July. So we have a selection committee. We try and keep the process very standardized and equitable. In July, you might be hearing from us if you're chosen as a finalist for application interviews, notification of conditional finalist selection, which will then initiate the organizational assessment process. And that is what I was mentioning earlier. All of those eligibility requirements are for the purpose of the organizational assessment. So if you are selected, our grants and contracts team will be looking for those minimum requirements in order to be able to grant to you. Final approval and subgrant agreement signed by July, and projects would begin August 15th. Here are some frequently asked questions. You can also find more here on this website, the frequently asked questions website on grants and fellowships specifically. So some of these questions are: previous Small Grants Fund applicants eligible to apply? Yes, previous applicants are eligible to reapply for the Small Grants Fund as long as they meet the 2025 eligibility requirements. For past grantees, we will look for a demonstration of significant impact that scales and improves upon their previous grant. Question 2, I'm seeking funding for a small component of a larger project. Can I apply for the Small Grants Fund? Yes, we encourage applications that clearly demonstrate how GFW contributes to existing work. And there is a section in the application where you can detail if this project is part of a larger project that with additional funding. Can the Small Grants Fund application be filled out in languages other than English? Yes, we are happy to share. We worked very hard this year to be able to accept applications in Spanish and French as well as English. So that is an option for you. Please note that we will still require at least one person on your team with professional working proficiency in English to be able to submit the required due diligence forms. And finally, and this is just 4 questions of many that are included in the FAQ page. So I would definitely encourage you to look into the rest of the questions if you have any others. Can the computerized financial system be Excel, or does it need to be an internet-based financial program? You may still apply if the system is Excel, but we strongly prefer candidates who use professional accounting software. Okay, so now we are going to move on to the application platform tour. Looks like we're doing pretty good on time, and I see a lot of questions accumulating in the Q&A, so we will get to those. Okay, so I'm going to take you through the process from start to finish to apply to the Small Grants Fund. So earlier, I took you all to the globalforestwatch.org. To get to this page, you would go to help. This brings a drop-down menu, which takes you to grants and opportunities, which will take you to the projects page. You will then click on apply, which takes you to this page, which has all of the information that you need to know about the Small Grants Fund, which includes the guidelines for application, for the guidelines for applicants, which are available in English, Spanish, and French. This link here, I have it twice on the page and it says apply here. So that's where you will click to actually go to the application platform to start your application. We will not be accepting applications via email or attachment. So you do need to complete your application through the application portal. Here it is again, apply here with a reminder of the timeline of when it's open with the deadline of May 9th. I did provide sample application form in PDF. I know I got some requests for this last year, so I'm hoping that this would be helpful for folks to have the PDF form of the application just to prepare. But again, reminder that you must submit your applications through the online portal link provided above, which is here. So you can refer to the PDF to prepare, but ultimately you must apply through the portal. Once you click on apply here, it will take you here. So this is what you will see. This is the application portal. It has some instructions here on how to get started. You register for an account. You can start your application. You can also save it in progress and come back to it at any time, and then submit your application to be reviewed. This is where you will select your preferred language for the application. And this is where you will log in or register, and note that you can also log in with a Google account. So if you have a Gmail, that's usually the easiest way to log in or register rather. Once you register through an email, you will get a 6-digit code sent to your email. So please make sure that you check your spam folder and make sure you mark the sender as not spam. It should be no reply at goodgrants.com or something like that. So make sure to check your spam and mark the sender as not spam, because you will be receiving more notifications from that email address. And once you input the 6-digit code, this is where you can register fully with your first name, last name. This would be if you just register through email. If you register through Gmail, it already has all the information and it'll just be a bit quicker and easier. This is the home page of the application portal. So once you get there, there's all of this important information, a reminder of the deadline, the notification, etc. And you would click start the application here in order to get started. If you have any questions, you can just click this link and it'll take you to the email inquiry form. So this is the first page of the application. I just wanted to make a note here. When you write in your project name, definitely take a minute to think about it a little bit, because if you are selected, this name will be used in contractual documents as well as any external communication. So whatever project name you choose at this point, you will be your project name throughout the cycle if you're chosen. So do try and think about this a little bit more and what you want your project name to be. This is very important. So after you've completed the application, or sorry, after you complete the project description tab of the application and the organizational information tab, there is the final tab, which is the additional documents tab. This is also required and important. So the two required documents are the project budget and the project log frame. I provide you with the template for the project budget and the project log frame here. It is in a Google Drive so that it can be shareable to you, but you cannot edit the Google Drive. You have to click file and download it externally. Because I've already gotten multiple requests from people to have access to edit this document. And I just want to emphasize this document is a template. I will not be allowing anybody to edit the template because the template needs to remain clean so that everybody can use the template without other people's information on it, right? And I imagine you also don't want your information being seen by other people, especially the budget. So please do not request to edit this document because I will not allow it. You need to download it, edit it locally on your computer to complete it that way, and then upload it here through the drag and drop or selecting the file. So I hope that clears things up for that one. Please, yeah, remember it's a template. So I don't want people editing the template. This is what it should look like once you when you get there. So this is on the Google Drive form. So you'll see here this where it says file. You click file, and then there should be an option download as XLSX, which is the Excel sheet. Do that rather than CSV. Do Excel sheets. And then you'll also see down here the budget is provided in Spanish and French as well. So when you download it, you can click on the tab that you prefer to complete the budget in, and do it that way, and then re-upload it as I've instructed. This is an additional feature that is available that I added for you all. I understand that you work in a team, and sometimes it can help to invite collaborators on your application. So that's what this tab is. So once you've completed all of these and you get to, you can click add a collaborator tab, and this is what it will look like. At this point, you can click add a collaborator, and you can include their name, email, and send the request. You can add up to 4 collaborators. This is what it's going to look like in their mailbox. This is what it'll look like, you know, in their when they receive it. So it'll say Global Forest Watch, you have been invited to collaborate. This is what the actual email will look like. So it'll say you've been invited by XYZ person to collaborate, and then you'll click this document to get to the application and fill out any edits. And once you're done, you can click at the bottom, I have made all necessary edits, or you can click, I have no edits. Sorry, I need to have some water. Okay. Once you complete your application and you submit it, you will receive this email as well, which is a survey of your experience of the application. It is optional, but if you are willing to take it, we would really love to hear about your experience of the application so that we can improve. This is a new platform, so would definitely love to hear about how your experience was, and also especially how your experience was completing it in different languages. Okay, now we're going to close out with some proposal writing tips, and then we should have a good amount of time for Q&A. Proposal tips. So these are the categories of what the selection committee will be looking for when they review applications. So relevance, we're looking for you to clearly indicate how your project will support using forest monitoring data on GFW for improved forest management, enforcement, and or campaigning for one of the key approaches. Make sure to elaborate on your methods and plan for each approach. So in the application, when you select your approach, an additional question will show up that says, please explain your methods and plan for this approach. Do make sure that you elaborate on that and really clarify how you're planning to use an advocacy approach, for example, and what exactly is going to be your methodology, and what mechanisms you will use to pursue that approach. Feasibility. Articulate how WRI funding will be leveraged to enhance existing projects or ongoing work related to forest monitoring. Make sure your activities and timelines are achievable and your activities are reflected in your budget. In the budget, there is that budget detail column. Please make sure to complete that with details about each budget line and explaining what that allocated budget will exactly be used for. Remember that the projects are only 1 year, so make sure that when you are setting out your activities, that you're keeping that in mind, that it's all achievable within the time frame, and that you have a plan for each of your activities, and that's all clearly communicated in the proposal. Potential for impact. GFW data and tools lead to outcomes such as a change in policy or recognition of an area's legal status, a lawsuit, an investigation, a fine or penalty, or a successful campaign or boycott. Include indicators of success that you will use to measure progress. So really make sure to emphasize the vision that you have for the outcomes of the project. So you are doing weekly monitoring investigations in the field, but what are you hoping to that will then lead to? Are you planning to create reports and file official denunciations with the relevant forest authorities that will then hopefully lead to fines for the perpetrators or the establishment of a protected area, etc. So make sure you're including, of course, your project activities and all of that, but try and think also in the future of what the outcomes of those activities will be. Sustainability. Project outcomes will lead to lasting impact beyond the project's life cycle. How will you work with systems that are already in place and embed learnings, etc.? So we understand that the project is just a year, and it's hard to accomplish very much in that amount of time, but if your project can demonstrate that you're working with systems that are already in place, working to build capacity of people that are in positions where they're already conducting forest monitoring, and then this will improve their practices, etc. I think there are a lot of ways that you can show sustainability of your project, and that's what we'll be looking for as well. Just to review the logical framework very quickly for those that might not be familiar or might not have done a logical framework before. This box, and we do have an example in the template that I offered you, and please make sure not to fill out the example. So that part is in blue. This part with all of these different colors is the part that we're expecting the applicants to fill out. So you'll see the overarching goal and objective. So this is the main accomplishment of your project. This is the change that you expect to see by the time your project ends. For outcomes, these are the results that you anticipate from your outputs and activities. The outcome indicators, are going to be the way that you measure that change as a result of the activities outputs. And it should be quantitative where possible. I also understand that some data might be qualitative, but it and I'll get more into how you a strategy for that in the next couple slides. Activities are going to be specific tasks that need to be done to produce the outputs, so trainings, etc. And then the outputs are clear, concrete products or deliverables that directly link to desired outcomes. So here are some examples of output versus outcome. It can get sometimes even I get confused about this sometimes because output is meant to be a product, an end product of something. So a training manual or a sensitization training or something like that. So the first example, alerts, investigations, and reports are used to inform policy. This would be more of an outcome. An output would be 3 in-depth forest threat analyses are produced using data on GFW to assist the long-term management of each forest area of the project. And then if we look over an outcome, this is more of an output. And this outcome, more illegal activities are reported to authorities by forest fringing communities because GFW use and weekly forest monitoring patrols. So that's an example of an outcome. For the outcome indicators, SMART is always a good methodology to keep in mind when you're creating them. So this means specific, measurable, accurate, and attributable, relevant and reliable, and time-bound. So I'm going to share the slides with everybody afterwards, and I want to make sure we have time for questions. So just really quickly, specific, make sure the information is easily understood. Measurable, are the changes verifiable? Do you understand how you will measure the indicator? Accurate, is it measuring what needs to be monitored? Does it relate to the output? Relevant, is the information used for decision making, analytical purposes, locally relevant? And time bound, make sure you're collecting at regular intervals over a specific period of time. Which brings me to our last slide. I'll review this quickly. So the overarching goal and objective, these are just some examples of ones of what would be considered a good one. So for example, long-term monitoring plans are put in place for SYVY forest reserves. There is a 5% reduction of deforestation alerts in the areas by project end. This is an example of a good overarching goal slash objective, because it explains how project outcomes lead to a noticeable, specific, and noteworthy result for project areas of focus. An example of a not so good one would be the ability of local observers to monitor forests using GFW tools is achieved. This is vague. Who are the local observers? How their ability to use GFW tools are achieved, and how is this measured? So notice these ones have some sort of numeric value attached to it, which can be helpful in measuring these sorts of outcomes. And lastly, relating to the time-bound element of the SMART methodology, your impact is only as good as how you can measure it, oftentimes, because you want to be able to take that impact and communicate it to other potential funders in the future, and really look at what you actually achieved from the project and be able to capture that impact in a really clear way. So another important methodology for that is setting a baseline for the project. So usually we see this as at the beginning of the project, either conducting a baseline survey of community members' understanding of forest monitoring tools and technology, so that you can then conduct another survey at the end and be able to measure the difference in the knowledge that was achieved throughout the project cycle, which can then help to inform your outcome indicators and the impact that you want to then communicate from the project. So that's it for now. I know we have a lot of questions that we need to get to. But before we get to the questions, reminder to complete our webinar survey. A recording of this webinar will be available on the apply page. Application deadline is May 9th. Please send your inquiries to GFW Fund at WRI.org. And there's always the help center there for you if you want to do your own self-paced learning and exploration of Global Forest Watch. So yeah, I will open it up for questions now. Isabella?
Great. Yes, we received a lot of questions. I'll just run through the list that we have here. And just so you know, if we didn't have time to answer your question, you can definitely email us the email you see on the screen at gwfund@wri.org. So the first question from Fabiola, I am translating, is when considering a financial system, does this mean like refer to any program in particular? Another point is that if the organization has financial auditors, on the contrary, like can it present like financial reports? So a bit more from the budget financial side. Any insights on that, Stephanie?
Yeah, so there will be an opportunity to explain the financial system that you use in the application. We are not looking for any specific financial system. I think that there are a lot of options out there. There's Cost Point, there's etc. We are not partial to any specific financial system. Our grants and contracts team, when they're doing the due diligence, will look at that as part of the process. So yeah, there's no specific financial system in particular. And as I mentioned, if you use Excel, that is still acceptable. But we strongly prefer an online financial system just because they tend to be more accurate and organized and helpful in that way. If your organization has auditors, that's great. You can submit the your most recent audit report. So if you are submitting your most recent audit report, then you don't need to submit those other 3 requirements that we mentioned. That is only if you cannot submit, you don't have a most recent audit report, then we require the budget from the past 2 years, the spending, etc. The 3 that are mentioned.
Great. Thanks so much for that helpful information. Another question from Sita from Indonesia. They'd like to know, how intensive does WRI provide advice and support throughout the project? Will GFW also provide trainings on GFW tools as well?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Sita. So as I mentioned, each grantee gets assigned an advisor. So the the training and advisory capacity is as much as you want it to be. So if you would like to request trainings on GFW tools, we are more than happy to do that. And if you have any questions that come up, you can consider your advisor your main point of contact, so you can decide what form of communication you want to use. If it's WhatsApp and you are conducting training and you come across a question, you can WhatsApp them. Another reason that our geographic eligibility tends to be a little smaller is actually for this purpose, because we like to assign advisors that are regional to the grantee so that the support can be contextually specific. And in some cases, for example, in the case of WRI Indonesia, we have an office in Indonesia. We actually have had staff be able to go into the field and conduct trainings with the grantees in person. So when I mentioned earlier the geographic eligibility, that's another thing that we take into consideration, is where do we have WRI offices and staff that can really support the grantees as much as possible. So that's what we're really hoping to achieve with that.
Great. And just kind of on the note of eligibility, since I see kind of a group of questions are around, why are certain countries eligible? And I think you did a great job explaining it. I don't know if it's possible to go back to that slide, but I guess maybe any input for countries that aren't on the list, if they're not on the final list, like should they still, is it worth still trying to apply, or is it best to subscribe for like updates in the future, just for those who aren't on the geographic eligibility list?
Yeah. Yes. So again, this is the geographic eligibility list. It is final. We did take great care and lots of discussions and back and forth in deciding this list. So I am very sorry if your country isn't included in this list. As I mentioned, we have very limited funding. We want to make sure it's in areas where we have folks on the ground that can really provide that help. So if your country that you're hoping to do work in is not does not appear on here, it's not eligible. So it wouldn't make it through to the final review stage. Yeah, we often do, raise these questions internally and consider the geographic eligibility every year. So this list does change. So even this year, we added a couple of countries that weren't available last year. So the list is always changing, and we are always adapting as much as we can to those needs. But it is very hard to, do every country in the world that is experiencing forest threats. So we are trying our best with that, and we appreciate your understanding.
Thank you. Just wanted to kind of address the group of those related questions, but definitely follow us, especially if your country isn't here. The more people that email us that there's a need for this kind of support in country, so please do get in touch. And I would just do a quick plug for the Help Center. So even though you may not receive the grant funding, there's still ways to get involved with GFW. We have a lot of great tutorials, previous webinars. You can learn how to use our data and tools. Of course, we're also happy to connect you with other organizations who might be doing similar work if you reach out to us. So just want to note that there are other ways to build that capacity. But let's move on to a few other questions. I know we have a bit less than 5 minutes left. Some questions around, can a project combine two or more approaches? So some questions are around like if we can have a combination of projects, for example, like monitoring and development capacity. You could talk a bit about that, Stephanie.
Yeah, thanks, Isabella. So yes, so we provide, as I mentioned earlier, to approach. We have provided questions for a primary approach and a secondary approach in the application. So you'll be able to specify both of those, whether it's advocacy paired with informing land use management, etc. So that is completely allowable, and you can explain it in your application form. Just make sure you're keeping in mind what is feasible during the allotted project timeframe.
That's really helpful. Another question from Emile, translating from French. So this is interesting. So within the framework of GFW Small Grants Fund, is it possible to draft a project targeting logging companies? And this person's from Cameroon.
Yeah, I want to say yes, but I'm not sure I fully understand the question. We have had projects in the past investigate logging companies. For example, we had a project in Indonesia that worked with the local indigenous people to develop monitoring brigades and track illegally logged wood that was then being transported out, and they were in fact able to capture it at the port and have that illegally logged wood seized. So if that example helps frame it a little bit better, then that works. Yeah, so as long as it's, as I mentioned earlier, trying to investigate illegal or unplanned deforestation.
That's helpful. Yeah, and I would just note that many small grants fund projects aim to raise awareness for legal action or legal logging. So it just depends how you frame it. So just consider that, of course, like there could be other relevant themes. And I think we can wrap up with maybe one or two more questions. There is a question regarding is tree planting and reforestation programs eligible for consideration?
Yeah, thank you for that question. No, as I mentioned earlier, the focus is really protect. We do have a restoration team at WRI that runs the Terra Fund opportunity that I would point you towards. But the focus of the Global Forest Watch Small Grants Fund is protect rather than restore. So thank you for that question. So yeah, that would be outside of the scope of the grant. I am seeing a couple questions about budget, so I just wanted to talk. Yeah, just wanted to talk about that really quickly. And then I saw another one of whether the project can work in multiple countries. For budget, we are very flexible with budget. What is in the template is what you can complete. So those are each of the project lines, the budget expense lines. You'll see that there is, like a GNA one or a indirect costs one. So as long as you're explaining in the budget detail each budget line, and it is reasonable what the budget is for. So for example, if it's like 80% of the budget is indirect costs, like that probably wouldn't go over very well with the selection committee. So we leave it up to you for your own discretion, but definitely just make sure that you're thinking about how your budget is being used to further your project activity, and whatever indirect rate often works for you for that, that is reasonable. And for the other question, yes, we have had grantees work in multiple countries in the past, as long as they are part of the geographically eligible countries.
Great, and I think with that, we're at time. So, if we didn't have a chance to address your question, you can definitely email us at the GW Fund email. You can also contact us directly if you have any questions. If you have any questions related to GFW in particular, and not so much about the Small Grants Fund, you can also email us at gw@wri.org. But back to you, Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you, Isabella. So thank you all for your time today. As I mentioned, this was recorded, so we'll include the recording as well as the slides on the apply page on our website. Thank you so much for your time again, and feel free to reach out with any questions. And I wish you all the best of luck. And thank you for your important work. We appreciate it. Everyone take care and have a good rest of your day, evening, morning, etc. Bye.